The Five Nights at Freddy's franchise has a total of 12 different FNAF games that don't even include the spin-off games, dozens of books, and even movies in the works. The series that started as a simple horror indie game developed into a cultural phenomenon, with FNAF being a staple in the horror genre and community. With new games being released, it has all created one single deep and complicated storyline with confusing lore for fans to attempt to solve. But what if it all ended? What if the story that we all grew to love and appreciate had finally come to an end? Every character, animatronic, and storyline had finally been put to rest. This would open the doors for a complete reboot and overhaul of the lore and story. Fans have wanted a reboot ever since the release of FNAF Help Wanted and continue to support the idea of one. So in this video, I'm going to give my own concept and idea of what a FNAF reboot would look like and why one is ultimately important. I'm going to cover where this reboot would take place, the characters, gameplay, the story, the lore, and how it could set up future FNAF games. But I also want to give a special thanks to the Unwithered Truth who inspired this video. I'm sure many of you have seen his amazing FNAF 1 reboot video. So I also wanted to give my take on a reboot that would be completely separate to the FNAF games we all know and love. My main goal is to introduce a completely new story or timeline, diverging from the established lore of previous games like rebooted games often do. I don't just want to retell what we already know. So please consider hitting that like and subscribe button, and let's go over my rebooted FNAF franchise, Five Nights at Freddy's Fall Fest. Now to set the scene, we're going to get Secret of the Mimic this June, which will be an origin game to the antagonist, the Mimic, that takes place in the year 1979. This game will ultimately lead into what I believe could be the final game to the FNAF franchise, either that being FNAF Security Breach 2, Ruin 2, or even Help Wanted 3. This game would focus on the remaining characters like Cassie, Gregory, Freddy, Roxy, and Vanessa, all taking down the Mimic after the events of Ruin. After they are successful and after a satisfying ending, nothing else would need to be resolved. Every villain like Glitchtrap or the Mimic have been defeated, and even what's left of Fazbear's Entertainment would also finally be gone, perfectly setting up a rebooted story and FNAF project. So to give an overview of my reboot, I wanted it to revolve around something that had already been established in the main story, but something that was never explored. Something that has actually been teased since the very first Help Wanted game, but we've never actually seen it been played out, Fall Fest. We saw recreations of Fall Fest 83, it's assumed mini games from Help Wanted 2 took place in Fall Fest, it's also assumed that mascot costumes from Ruin and from Secret of the Mimic were created and were used in Fall Fest. And most importantly, we got our first look at a poster advertising Fall Fest, one I'm going to use a lot in this video. But we never actually had a game take place in Fall Fest outside of some mini games, and we don't really know what it looked like or entailed story-wise. Even if we get a lot of references to this carnival and Secret of the Mimic, it still won't be the main focus. So my reboot would take place in this carnival, in Fall Fest. Instead of just having it take place in a pizzeria that is somehow connected to Fazbear's, I wanted to take place somewhere new. With the current state of FNAF, it's hard to imagine this franchise returning to a point-and-click style of gameplay. So instead, this reboot would follow the same free-roam 3D style of gameplay we've seen with Steel Wolf FNAF projects, which would allow it to take place in a large and detailed map of a carnival, one that would be split up into multiple sections for the player to explore. There would be classic attractions like a Ferris, a log ride, roller coasters, games where you can win prizes, but there would also be character-focused attractions as well, like Freddy's Ferris wheel, Bonnie's bumper boat, Foxy's free fall, Chica's chocolate stand, and more attractions featuring characters I'll discuss soon. So now when looking at the characters, how do the classic animatronics return in my reboot? Well, I would do it through the Carnival mascot suits. Yes, we have seen mascot suits in Ruin and in the Secret of the Mimic trailer, but they've always been in the background and haven't been the main focus, but here they would be. We would see entirely new mascot suits of Freddy, Bonnie, Foxy, and Chica, the four main animatronics we all know and love. But I would also want to include other fan favorites with their own attractions, like Funtime Freddy's Fun Slide and a secret Fredbear mascot suit that will play an important role later. But to keep the classic FNAF theme, of course we also have to include actual animatronics, like Balloon Boy who sells balloons, and the puppet who would be at the front of the carnival welcoming guests and families. So we have a total of 8 different mascots and animatronics, creating a solid lineup of characters for this rebooted FNAF project. But what about the human characters, and who will we play as? Well, like many of the earlier classic FNAF games, there wouldn't be that many human characters besides the protagonists themselves. And what better way to reboot FNAF than to start at the very beginning by playing as a security guard named Mike. No, this wouldn't be Michael Afton, nor would he even be remotely connected to the Aftons. This is someone entirely new who happened to be named Mike. I also like the idea of having a phone guy in this game who would be giving us instructions on how to navigate the carnival and what exactly our job would be. Again, we are taking classic elements from FNAF 1 and placing them into a new environment and story. Following the same format, the game will take place throughout 5 different nights, with each one progressively getting harder, and with one bonus optional 6th night. But before we can really start to look at the gameplay, we first need to go over the story or timeline. The story would mainly revolve around fresh starts and the idea of what a new Fall Fest would mean for Fazbear's entertainment. It would actually take a lot of inspiration from the FNAF 2 movie and FazFest. FazFest is an event for the fans by the fans. It even looks like a carnival type of attraction where people are wearing merchandise from the old locations. And it even looks like it's going to be where Toy Freddy will have some role. The part I'm taking inspiration from is the fact that all of this was created by fans. So like in my reboot, this new Fall Fest would be created entirely by fans who were obsessed with these characters or animatronics. And by this point, every tragedy and incident from Fazbear's entertainment has become a myth. All the bites, murders, and murderous animatronics have been forgotten. We've finally been able to move on. So although it is a branch of the older games, none of the characters or incidents would be mentioned, not even Fazbear's entertainment. Unlike Help Wanted, which can be seen as a reboot for the franchise, these fans aren't trying to fix the name of the company or to regain the trust of the guests. That was already done for them with time. The game itself would start with a newspaper like any other FNAF game, a newspaper advertising a new Fall Fest created by fans looking for a security guard. A security guard that would not only monitor the entirety of the carnival, but they would also need to fix any machines that have malfunctioned or stopped working. They would work both as a technician and as a security guard. In the same newspaper, we would also learn about this group of fans working together to create a new Fall Fest and would now go under a new company name, Golden Hour Carnival Co. The year this all takes place would remain a mystery, which is what would start the lore and parts of it to be solved. But now we can start to look at the gameplay alongside the story. On night 1, the game would start with the player walking to the gates of Fall Fest, where he is greeted by the puppet jumping out of a box handing tickets to customers. A little scared, the player continues into the carnival, where immediately after walking in, the PA system goes off loudly playing an energetic voice, Phone Guy. He's welcoming you to Fall Fest, a brand new carnival created by a new team, but with the old characters you all love and remember. Continuing to walk, the voice tells you your first objective, which is to go to the corner of Fall Fest where Freddy's Ferris wheel is located, to fix it, since after the first day it wasn't starting properly. Security wise, he tells you to watch out for kids sneaking in and trying to mess with the animatronics. But while walking to the Ferris wheel, you find some carnival mascot suits like Chica standing in front of her stand or Funtime Freddy standing next to his fun slide while waving at you in an ominous way. Through Phone Guy, you also learn that some of the mascots have been acting rather strange and even aggressive towards certain customers, and he advises you just to stay cautious, but you have nothing to worry about. You then finally reach Freddy and his attraction, but you notice the Freddy mascot is missing from his usual place, so after fixing the machine, you look around the carnival to find him. When walking through the different attractions, you hear a noise, almost as if something is following you. Then boom, you hear a loud noise in front of you, only to find Bonnie staring at you from a distance. Scared and afraid, you begin to run, only for him to chase you while destroying everything in his path to find you. No matter where you are, Bonnie appears from your sides, under you, over you. It seems like an endless cycle that never ends. If he does catch you, you are jump scared and killed. A jump scare reminiscent of the first FNAF games while being a mascot animatronic instead. But finally, reaching a manager's office and playing loud music on the speakers is what makes Bonnie retreat and return to his attraction. For the rest of the night, you complete small objectives fixing and patrolling the carnival, all while avoiding Bonnie and attempting to find Freddy. Once the clock hits 6 AM, you head back to the front gates, where the puppet waves a goodbye to you. Now with the first night, my main objective is to establish the carnival setting and to establish all mechanics and gameplay. It's also an easy introduction to the mascots being a threat, with you only having to avoid Bonnie and completing small objectives. But each night would be something unique. So with night 2, it will be known as Lights Out. Starting the night, the player immediately notices that all lights are shut off and aren't working. This leaves only the noise of the attractions being what's drawing your attention, so you take out your flashlight and begin your journey to turn on the lights. The security office to reset the lights is stationed on the other side of the entrance. So on your journey, you notice trails of food leading into different directions, when all of a sudden Chica runs in front of your flashlight and disappears. Each time you turn around to find her with your light, she only runs more and retreats more into the darkness. So in a last-ditch effort, you find candy and food around stands and throw them into the dark to buy yourself time. And it works, until you reach the security office, where you find small crumbs of candy leading to the door, which leads you to realize that Chica beat you there. So in a sequence similar to the Endo Daycare from Security Breach, flashing your light on Chica would make her stop moving. But moving the light away from her and turning your back even slightly would cause her to sneak up on you to attempt to capture you. So watching her back, you slowly find the office where you are able to reset all lights, but Chica is nowhere to be found. Exiting the circus, you find Chica near her chocolate stand as if she never left, but you do notice small crumbs on her beak. Night 2 is supposed to familiarize the player with more areas of the carnival, and it showcases the mechanics of Chica, where she can only show up in the dark. A way to distract her by throwing food into the darkness, and to never turn your back on her when you're alone in the dark. But the third night is finally when we can start to learn more about the story. When walking up to the front gates, you notice that the puppet is disabled, and that missing people posters are plastered everywhere. Over the past 2 days, children have gone missing. Phone guy apologizes for the lights being shut off and leaving you without clarity or directions last night. While also attempting to explain the missing children posters, he claims there's nothing to worry about and that it's simply parents wanting attention. He ends the call over the speakers by saying your only objective for the night is to find Freddy. So he guides you to Foxy's freefall, where you have to climb to the very top to get a better view to find Freddy. On your way up, you notice how weak and flimsy the stairs are, but you continue while also noticing hook marks around the stairs. Before you can even reach the top, Foxy jumps from behind you and has been following you quietly this entire time. He chases you to the very top on a small platform, where there you do everything in your power to escape. But before you have a chance to react, Foxy jumps on top of you and begins his jump scare animation. So at the last second, you slip under and push him off the edge of the ride. You watch as he falls to the very bottom, leaving nothing but the sound of his landing. Once you reach the bottom yourself, you find his endoskeleton sticking out of his mascot and realize you need to fix him before you get in trouble. You drag him to a parts and service tent near one of the rides, where you place Foxy on a table and begin to work. You find blueprints and even an employee video you play on a laptop to help you. When taking the Enzo out of the mascot suit, you realize something is severely wrong. Its wiring is all over the place, parts are where they shouldn't be, and there's even a hard drive attached to the motherboard. It's clear to you that someone has been messing with the mascots, and that's possibly why they're even acting strange, but this still doesn't explain the missing children. But before you can even repair Foxy, he reactivates and chases you out of the tent and out of the carnival, ending night 3. With this night, I wanted to establish the start of a tragedy with the missing children. Yes, it's something that has been done many times with FNAF, but it's an important plot point that doesn't necessarily need to be changed. But I assure you, how I execute it will be different from the FNAF we all know. It's also a great way of showing what's wrong with the animatronics and leaves a mystery of who messed with the mascots, something I'll mention later. So now looking at night 4, where is Freddy? At the start of the night, you notice that the puppet is completely missing from her box at the gate, and that phone guy doesn't have a message for you. On a quest to find Freddy, you decide to venture to Fun Times Freddy Fun Slide, and on your way there, you hear a noise on the roofs of stands and attractions getting closer to you. Paying closer attention, it's the puppet crawling on roofs and tents following you. Obviously you run, which only causes her to chase after you faster, which forces you to detour into Bonnie's bumper cars. But there you don't find Bonnie, you find Funtime Freddy, who isn't where he's supposed to be. He stares at you across the large room filled with bumper cars but doesn't move. When all of a sudden the lights shut off once more and the only lights that remain are from the bumper cars. You begin to hear footsteps from Funtime Freddy moving closer and closer to you. So in almost complete darkness, you have to move in any direction to avoid him. The lights turn back on for a slight second, revealing Funtime Freddy's new location before shutting off again. He begins to move closer and closer. You can only rely on the sound of his footsteps to move away from him. Run into a car accident and an alarm will go off alongside music, which will not only give away your location but will also drown out Funtime Freddy's footsteps, meaning you wouldn't know where he is and how close he is to you. Get caught and you'll be jump scared, but avoid him and you'll escape through a back exit. When back outside, the puppet continues to chase you while you complete small objectives of fixing carnival rides, as a big part of your job is being a technician. Bonnie would still be a threat and someone who roams the carnival freely. But once again, the clock hits 6 AM and you head to the gates with the puppet still following you and you escape alive. With night 4, not only did I want to give Funtime Freddy a role, but I also wanted to finally make the actual animatronics a threat as well. It's also a good way of showcasing his unique mechanics and to make the night in general different from the others. But the 5th night would be the hardest one yet. Walking to the gates, you immediately see Freddy himself dragging something deeper into the carnival and into parts of its darkness. Alarmed and relieved, you chase after him only to be stopped by Balloon Boy jumping in front of you. But he doesn't chase you or jump scare you, instead he would act like an alarm, releasing a loud noise and balloons to give away your location to the other mascots and animatronics. So you turn around only to find Foxy's endoskeleton running at you. So going another way, you then find Bonnie doing the exact same thing. So without many options, you go into different attractions and stands. But there you would have a chance of running into either Chica or Funtime Freddy, having to face them with the same mechanics as night 2 and 4. You have to run away from all mascots including Balloon Boy, who is an alarm, and the puppet, who is still chasing you from the roofs of attractions. To add to the horror element, all of this could randomly stop only for you to feel alone as if something was watching you. So you could find mascots in the distance staring at you only for another one to randomly appear in front of you and begin chasing you. I wouldn't want this night just to feel like a level of security breach where animatronics are just around the carnival and can chase you. I want it to feel random and terrifying for the player to be out in the open but not knowing where anyone is. But finally, you find Freddy outside of the auditorium dragging the same thing inside. Instinctively, you chase him inside only to find nothing. There you find a manager's office with security cameras, where you can actually watch Freddy walk around different rooms and areas. You have to keep your eye on him, as if you don't, you'll lose him, causing him to enter the office and jump scare you. But keeping an eye on him, he'll eventually remain stationary, which will give you a chance to go around him and to go to a back room. There you open the door quietly. You find 6 different mascots, all of the same character, but their heads are missing and something is visibly popping out. Walking closer to one of the mascots and looking inside, you realize it's a body, and what's been showing out of the suit was their hair. Horrified, you run out of the auditorium and out of the carnival with animatronics still chasing you, ending night 5. Now, Night 5 establishes the missing children incident. Here, it wasn't a man in a suit doing it for some unknown reasons, but instead, it's a mascot animatronic also doing it for an unknown reason. Now, who these kids are, were they the same as the one on the missing children posters, or how they ended up at the carnival aren't really made clear for a reason. All of this could be left up for interpretation, and it's supposed to remain a mystery. In terms of gameplay, I really wanted to lean into how difficult the original FNAF was, with all animatronics being a real threat, and it might even be something that takes multiple tries to complete. Now, completing this night will unlock you 1 star, but going back for a 6th night will unlock the 2nd one. Here, all animatronics are missing. It's quiet with no trace of them. You're here with one goal: go back to the auditorium to see if you can save them. You walk for a while with no visible threats near you, but that's when you see a new mascot you hadn't seen before. It's Fredbear. He just stares at you and doesn't move. Scared, you go another route only to find another version of Fredbear. Here he has a black vest and hat, not a purple one. Again, going another direction, you find another version of Fredbear. This time his colors are inverted. Going different routes, you'll find a total of 6 different versions of Fredbear all staring at you but not chasing you. Getting closer to the auditorium, you'll begin to see even more of them. They begin to pile up in different areas and it's hard to get around them. They keep appearing and appearing until eventually you're completely surrounded by hundreds of Fredbears just staring at you. The only way out is to stare at the ground while not directly looking at them. If you accidentally run into one or look up too soon, you'll be met with a unique jump scare which will be similar to the Golden Freddy jump scare from FNAF 1, where it's only the face of the mascot on your screen. But this will allow you to continue until you reach the auditorium. There you head to the back room only to find Fredbear. He stares at you quietly before his jump scare animation begins. His animation is the mascot slowly taking off the mascot head, revealing something inside, a body. But before it finishes, you cover your eyes with your arms. Some time passes and you realize you're safe. You head back out and realize you've been completely alone this entire time. But you hear commotion near a back exit of the carnival. There you find a truck with the Fredbears packed in the back. You try to alert someone or to stop it, but you're too late. The truck drives off, leaving you alone in the carnival before the screen fades to black. Now this would be the secondary ending or the real ending, but works alongside the ending from Night 5. So Night 6 serves the purpose of not only a terrifying night, but also a night that adds to the lore. There's also a lot of mystery with this night, like why are there multiple versions of Fredbear? Were they the same ones we saw the other night? Was all of this real? Where's the truck taking them? So with all this in mind, could there be a second game in store? Well, of course there could be. But I also wanted to ensure that this could work as a game completely on its own that doesn't need a sequel. With the first FNAF game, no second game was being worked alongside it, and the second one almost built off the first one, which would be my plan as well. But for now, Five Nights at Freddy's Fall Fest can stand as a solo game and won't need a sequel. Which brings me to an overview and summary of all of the lore I wanted to bring with this game. This game will take place a long enough time from the older games to where every tragedy and incident is now myth and almost forgotten. So none of the older characters or animatronics would show up or even be mentioned. It takes place in Fall Fest, a carnival created for the fans by the fans, just like Fast Fest in the FNAF 2 movie. A new company named Golden Hour Carnival Co. created mascot animatronics of each of Fazbear's most popular and memorable characters: Freddy, Bonnie, Chica, Foxy, Funtime Freddy, and Fredbear. There are also 2 animatronics in the carnival as well, the Puppet and Balloon Boy. You play as someone named Mike, who not only works as a security guard but also as a technician. Each night focuses on a different animatronic until the last one, where each single one is a threat. There are also reports of missing children around the area, but the company wants you to ignore them. One of the main focuses of my reboot is Freddy, who has been missing all week, until you find him dragging a body into the auditorium. There you find 6 versions of mascot Fredbear, all with a body inside as only the hair is popping out. For a 6th bonus night you return, only to be taunted and chased by multiple Fredbear suits. Avoiding them will only lead you to face Fredbear himself, where you're almost killed before everyone disappears. You then see all of the Fredbears from the night before packed in a truck before driving off. For the first game, I'm really happy with how everything turned out, especially having focus-based character nights like many classic FNAF games. But how does it compare to the original FNAF game since this is a reboot after all? Well, with the main gameplay, yes, it is drastically different, as in my reboot it's a 3D game outside of an office, which is why I instead wanted to include classic elements and keep other themes the same, like having the 4 main animatronics, having them all act unique and different. There's also a phone guy, a security guard named Mike, and a character who's different from the rest, Fredbear and Golden Freddy. Of course there's also the missing children's incident, but just done in a very different way. But it wouldn't really be a FNAF game without some minigames, and I really wanted to take inspiration from FNAF Central Location and its minigames. With this minigame you play as mascot Freddy, in a 2D pixelated art style game where you need to find tools and return them to employees who are wearing a blue vest and hat. You go around the area finding tools to fix Carnival rides, and you need to find a total of 6 different tools to return them to 6 different employees. After doing so, the minigame will turn to nighttime where you'll have to do the exact same thing. Find 6 tools and return them. After doing so a second time, the music cuts. You don't see any employees around you anymore. That's when you realize you can't move and you can't exit the minigame. That's when a child slowly starts walking into frame. He's cautious and looking around to make sure he's alone. But that's when he spots you and freezes. Your eyes slowly start turning yellow and you attack the boy before the minigame ends. Now this would actually be showing why and where kids went missing. On the first night we learned of kids sneaking in, and that's something we would have to watch out for, except we never see anyone sneak in. Well, that's because if a kid did sneak in, they would instead have to face Freddy, who would attack them and would then drag them into the auditorium to stuff their body inside of a mascot suit. And why all the animatronics are acting this way is set up in night 3, when Mike realizes that the mascot's programming has been changed on purpose, which as a result caused the missing children incident. But why and who did this still remains a mystery. But when looking back to night 6, I would want to make it a night you have to unlock, not just something that is available after beating night 5. So to unlock it each night, there's a minigame that you have to complete, like night 1 having a Bonnie bumper car minigame, a Chica-san minigame where you have to feed guests, a Foxy minigame where you have to time the free fall, a Funtime Freddy minigame where you simply go down a slide, and a Puppet minigame where you hand tickets to guests. This would all unlock the 6th night in the real ending. For more Easter eggs and clues, I like the idea of having newspaper clippings of the company to give the player a better idea of what it was. We could learn about how many members this company included, how they remembered these characters, and most importantly of anything else going on. We could learn about ongoing arguing within the team and maybe even about corruption. There could also be videos you play on a laptop showing how the carnival was made, how the mascots were made, which would all give us even more clues about this company. Now these are just Easter eggs and clues, things that can be built upon in the future if needed but not necessary. Now I also mentioned how you could unlock 2 stars, but what about the 3rd one? Well, to make it as difficult as possible like the first FNAF game, you would have to complete all 6 nights in a row without one single death. That means if you're on night 6 and you've completed all previous nights without dying, but then you die to Fredbear suddenly, you would have to restart and try again. Beating 420 mode on FNAF 1 was something that seemed so impossible, and even Scott Cawthon thought no one was able to do it, until people did. So this would be my equivalent of 420, but even then I don't think it would be just as hard. So completing all nights with no deaths, you will actually be met with a 3rd and final ending, where you're fired with a pink slip, with the only reason being that you failed to complete your job. The screen fades to black, revealing Fredbear staring at you, before fading to black once more, ending 5 Nights at Freddy's Fall Fest. To expand more on the horror element, I really want to lean more into the fact that you don't know what's out there. Again, animatronics chasing you can suddenly end, only for one to be off in the distance and in the darkness staring at you. I think that multiple things watching you while you have no idea where they are can be terrifying. I also like the idea of your screen becoming grainy or glitchy to signal you that something is near or that something is watching you. I really want to go back to the roots of horror, as that's what made the FNAF 1 game arguably the scariest one in the franchise. I also want to expand on my decision to completely separate it from the older games and why it isn't just a 13th or 14th installment to the franchise. Unlike games like Security Breach, there wouldn't be direct references or callbacks to the earlier games, like the FNAF 6 pizzeria being under the Pizzaplex. Sure, parts of the older lore were forgotten in this story, but they were still mentioned. But with my reboot, absolutely nothing would be the same as it was, and no one would know of those past tragedies. This new company who created Fall Fest simply know of the animatronics and of a really old carnival they wanted to recreate, as there's nothing else to remember. At one point I did consider having small Easter eggs to past pizzerias or even characters, but ultimately I decided against it, as I really did want to make this feel like a completely new reboot. One that would finally be a fresh start, not a continuation to a past story that we already knew about. Now I'm sure many of you are asking, why mascots? Why not just use animatronics like any other FNAF game? Well, like I mentioned, mascots have never really been the main focus, and I want them to be. There is a lot that can be done horror-wise with them, and that's exactly what I wanted with this reboot. It was also simply to make this reboot as different as possible from the original FNAF games while also having similar elements. So instead of completely creating new characters, I wanted to just make mascot versions of ones that already existed, like Mascot Freddy. I also wanted to make the title a bit different instead of just calling it FNAF 1. Having Fall Fest side with the name tells people exactly what it is, and I've always liked the idea of giving games names like that. But because this is just a concept idea of a reboot I have in mind, there isn't footage or gameplay that I could use in the background of the video. So instead I used a mix of mods from Security Breach and Ruin, and I also just used base gameplay for multiple games to do my best to capture the feeling and what this game would look like. With Fredbear and the multiple versions of this mascot, I always knew that I wanted Fredbear to have a large role in this game. I actually would still really like to see a Fredbear Family Diner game, as we've never really seen this character himself beside in minigames. So I wanted to make him a major focus here who did have a large role outside of Golden Freddy. Can it evolve to that point in my reboot? Of course it can, but for now I wanted to make it clear that this is Fredbear, and that there are multiple versions of himself for a reason I might be able to talk about in a FNAF 2 reboot video. But there were also a lot of cool ideas for other reboots in my comment sections, like one that would start with Fredbear's Family Diner, or reboots in general that would retell the story by filling in gaps of the lore. So thank you so much to everyone who showed support on the post I made leading up to this video, and let me know if that's what you were expecting. Also let me know if I should continue to make more posts teasing different videos and updating you on how the progress is going. But if you made it this far in the video, let's go over some more content I actually did make for this reboot. FNAF 1 has a very classic icon or logo that is seen everywhere as the franchise has progressed. So in an attempt to recreate this with the Fall Fest title next to it, here are some few ideas of what an icon for this game would look like. We of course have one with Freddy, and I also created one with Fredbear, since he would have just as big of a role as Freddy does. But of course, alongside a FNAF game comes teasers. With these teasers, I really took inspiration from FNAF 4, as we have a really dark setting and feeling from the animatronics. So here we have the mascots peering out of the shadows and darkness revealing themselves, with the text being something like, "What's hiding in the shadows?" I also think it would be really interesting if there are also classic style posters all over the carnival, which actually brings me to the collectibles. With the original FNAF games, we never actually had collectibles, but I do think it's a game mechanic that works very well with the Steel FNAF games, and it's something I would also want to include in my reboot as well. Not only can you collect posters or small items like carnival plushies and merchandise, but you'd also be able to collect something unique to the animatronics that are featured each night, like Bonnie's guitar, Foxy's hook, and Fredbear's bowtie. But these wouldn't really be for lore reasons like in FNAF Ruin, but just something to collect around the carnival for an achievement. I also like the idea of having small missions outside of the main objective, like for example one called Find Funtime Freddy's Missing Friend. Here you have to find Bon Bon, Funtime Freddy's hand puppet that went missing during the weekend. You hear his laugh randomly during nights, and if you follow the sound, the small mission will begin. You will see him popping out of corners waving at you before disappearing. You have to continue to follow him while actually looking at him, as if you lose him his laugh will disappear and you'll have to wait until the next night to try again. But eventually you will find him at the very front of the entrance, where you have to try to grab him while he continues to disappear. Finally doing so will end the side mission, and you'll be awarded with a Bon Bon collectible and achievement. Another idea is having a puppet mission, which would only be possible to play the first 2 nights. Here you realize that the tool needed to wind up your music box is missing, and that it must be somewhere in the carnival. So you can attempt to find it in different attractions or stands, but the only location it's actually in is Foxy's freefall and at the very top. If you find your way up there, you find the tool is misplaced and used for part of the freefall startup machine, so removing it and bringing it all the way back down to the puppet, you can place it back to where it belongs. Not only are you met with the collectible and achievement of the puppet, but after completing it, the puppet will also have a single voice line, simply saying, "Thank you, Mike," in an ominous and chilling way. Now side missions are something I always thought FNAF Security Breach was missing. It's just something more to do besides the main storyline, and makes the game that much more enjoyable. So having side missions here would really make the carnival feel more immersive and much more interesting, as there'd be much more to do and much more to explore in the carnival. Depending on how this video will perform, I will continue this reboot series, as I already have an idea for what the second game could look like. This was also just a very fun project that I really enjoyed working on. I've had this idea for a while now, as at first it was a what if story, and then after that it was an idea for a Fall Fest game, but I ultimately landed on a reboot video after seeing Unweathered Truth's video. So I want to give a special thanks to these very talented people up on the screen, as I used their models for different mascot animatronics to help create this idea. These mascots were exactly what I had in mind, and they were perfect for the video, so make sure to check out all their social medias and to show them all support. Again, another thanks to Unweathered Truth for inspiring this video, and if you haven't yet, make sure to check out his FNAF 1 reboot video. Also, please make sure to comment down any video recommendations down in the comment section. I always enjoy reading through the comments and I always want to know what you guys want more from this channel. So whether that be another reboot video, a specific theory or game that you want me to cover, or anything related to the Five Nights at Freddy's franchise, make sure to comment it down below. If it's something I end up making a video on, I'll make sure to give you complete credit in that video so you have a chance of being featured in any of my upcoming videos. So what do you guys want to see more from this channel? So with all that said, I hope you guys enjoyed my take on a FNAF reboot, Five Nights at Freddy's Fall Fest. So what do you guys think? Make sure to comment down below any thoughts or how you would reboot the franchise and how exactly would it look like. Where would you start? What characters and why? So make sure to like and subscribe for more content like this, and thank you guys so much for watching.